So I can definitely see myself getting some flack for even talking about this series and the fact that I'm almost 28 years old. I don't know what to expect except for some sexy vampire times. I just feel like this video is me telling you guys and confessing all of the young adult books that I have not read. This is probably my most guilty, like, series. Welcome to another bookish video. My name's Olivia if you haven't been here before. If you're not new, welcome back. Today is going to be a very interesting, kind of exciting video talking about 15 top series that I want to get to this year, whether that's finish or start. And you may say, Olivia, now 15 sounds like quite a bit. And you're right, but I do want to read 75 books this year. And some of these series aren't long series. They're maybe halfway done, or like I said, I need to finish them. So it's not like I'm going to be reading 10 book series or anything like that. So these are just some books on my shelf. I'm trying to challenge myself as much as possible this year to just read the books on my shelves. As I was looking through my shelf, I was like, there's actually quite a few series that I don't think I can fit into like my top 22 books for the year. So I decided to make this a separate video and talk about all the series that I want to get to this year. Just as a disclaimer, of course, most of these are fantasy. There is one dystopian and then another that's kind of like a mystery thriller-ish. So if you're not into fantasy, sorry. I do also have one middle grade here, but mainly this is going to be a fantasy series because I don't really know what other genre has series as much as fantasy does, so fantasy just kind of makes sense for this video. But anyways, we've got 15 to talk about, so let's just get right into it. Just as a disclaimer, this is my first time ever filming when it is pitch black outside. I recently got a ring light, so I was like, you know what? I just need to get over my fear of shooting in artificial lighting and do this. So if the lighting looks different or off, just bear with me because we're trying to experiment a little bit. I'm not going to be going super in depth with the synopsis of any of these series because they are all backlist series and none of these are new releases, so I'm sure you guys have heard of these before. So I'm just going to mainly explain to you why I want to finish these or why I want to start them instead of just explain the synopsis, because you guys can do that on your own. Starting out with a bang, we have Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. No, I have not gotten to this yet. I really enjoyed her other trilogy, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and this just seemed like the next step for me. I do know that this one is more urban fantasy, which isn't really up my alley, to be completely honest, but I do know we have angels and demons in this one, which sounds super cool. Really not sure what I'm gonna think about this one. The pages are like Bible-thin pages. This is a very big book, so that is why I decided to buddy read this with my friend Lauren, because she likes Sarah J. Maas, I like Sarah J. Maas. I need to be motivated some way, in some form, to pick this up finally, because I know I'm really gonna like it, and I know her second book comes out, I believe, February, so I need to catch up with her books. Really excited to see how she plays into her adult themes, because her young adult basically already feels like adult, in my opinion. It gets a little bit, you know, smutty, but really just interested in here to compare the two. The Poppy War is another really big book that just exploded a couple years ago when it came out, and I feel really behind on the trend that I have not actually read this yet. I have picked it up and put it on multiple TBRs before, but something about it just really like scares me. I think it's because it's really political and it has to do with, I think, Chinese war, if I'm not mistaken. I know this has to do with a lot of like Asian culture and history. I'm not sure if it's actually historical or not. I don't believe it is, as you can tell. My knowledge on this is very little because it's been such a long time since anyone has hyped this book up or anyone I know has read it, so very out of the loop with this one. But I feel like as a fantasy reader, I need to see what the hype was about. I need to read this one. I haven't really read any fantasy based on war alone. I am going into this one really blind, so if you've read it before, tell me if I need to bump it up on my list, so I can definitely see myself getting some flack for even talking about this series and the fact that I'm almost 28 years old, and no, I have never read Twilight in my entire life, but this year is going to be the year that I read this. I have seen all the movies, so I know a little bit about what I'm getting into. This is angsty vampire romance, which is generally not my cup of tea at all, but my sister and one of my best friends are always trying to convince me to pick this one up, and I feel like I missed out on this whole vampire trend in high school, and I'm ready to jump back into that and see why in the world these books are so popular. Go ahead and make fun of me all you want in the comments. As you can see, I've given into the hype train and we're gonna see how that goes, so stay tuned. I have this odd feeling that I'm gonna read this first one and just binge the rest, so we'll see what happens. I'm also interested to see why the heck Midnight Sun was written, but I want to get to that point where I can read it and kind of see Edward Cullen's point of view of how this whole story went down. I don't know what to expect except for some sexy vampire times. Definitely another throwback with this one is the Infernal Devices series, Clockwork Angel. I read the first 3 books, I believe, of the Shadowhunter series. I just couldn't push through. I really feel like I missed that era of the paranormal vampire. Like, I don't know, just everything about those books I really did try, but I know these books are just a giant step up with her writing, the plot. I know there is some references to the Shadowhunter series, but as a fantasy reader, I feel like I should have already read this like 10 years ago when this series first started, so I know that I'm going to love this. My friend Kayla a while ago was like trying to encourage me to pick it up, so it is one that I know I'm gonna like. I anticipate to love all of these books, honestly, but especially this one, I'm crossing my fingers that I love just as much as everyone else. Another huge throwback is The Dark Vault by Victoria Schwab. You all, I have read all of her books except for the last 2 of the Darker Shade of Magic series and also this duology. I am dying to read this. Like, my life goal is to read all of her books and all of Leigh Bardugo's books, which King of Scars is also on this list, but this one especially sounds so cool. I mean, we have our main character who is kind of like the keeper of the library, and all of these books are memories of people. Sounds really creepy and interesting, and I'm not sure what the conflict will be in this book. I just know that I need to read all of Victoria's books, and I am so stoked to read this one. And then we also have The Maze Runner! I know you guys are like laughing probably at all of these series I have not read, because I feel like I'm putting myself on blast right now, hardcore. I loved these movies so much. My sister is constantly telling me to pick this up because it is such a classic dystopian series. I'm ready for it. I am so ready for it. I've heard the books are some of the most like fast-paced young adult books out there, and if it's anything like the movies, I know I'm gonna like this even more because typically books are better than the movies. I am just super stoked to get to this. Like, for whatever reason, I just am really excited to read this one because I feel like I missed out. I just feel like this video is me telling you guys and confessing all of the young adult books that I have not read, and I'm slightly ashamed right now. This is definitely a Bookstagram made me do it. That is From Blood and Ash, and I have heard this is very similar to Sarah J. Maas quite a bit. There's a lot of similarities between the two, except I don't believe this has to do with Fae at all. I'm kind of going into this one blind as well because I don't want the hype train to get me too much. I'd rather go into it completely blind and kind of set my expectations a little bit low for this one just in case, because you can't really top Sarah J. Maas, but I know this one is super romantic. I do know this has to do with like gods and mortals and a fallen kingdom. I honestly, again, going into it completely blind, but multiple people whose taste that I am very similar with in reading, they've adored and loved this and keep telling me to pick it up. So I'm determined to make this a priority this year. Another author that I am so ashamed that I have not read as a fantasy reader. This is probably my most guilty like series that I have tried. I did try once in the past, couldn't get into it, is the Mistborn trilogy series. I've read Skyward by Brandon Sanderson and I loved it. So I picked this one up and it was very confusing, not very interesting, and I'm sure it just takes a while for this series to get going, but I have not heard a single bad review, a single bad thing about this series, and I think it turns me off a little bit because it's so dense, and honestly I thought it was an adult series, but apparently it's young adult. This is another book that I know absolutely nothing about. Going into it completely blind, but I know that I'm a Brandon Sanderson fan already. I know I need to read this, and I know I'm gonna love it. Yes, I'm gonna say that for every single one of these books. Another classic fantasy series that I feel like is the core of a lot of other fantasy series inspiration is Graceling by Kristen Cashore. I've never read anything by Kristen Cashore, and I have a super big interest in her books because as far as Goodreads goes, like, this is one of the top read fantasy books of all time, basically. I am very naive about this series. I don't know much about it, but I think our main character is actually hired to be the king's thug of some sort, and I just need to know who this girl is. I want to get to know her. I need to know what a Graceling is. I really don't know anything about this book, but I know it's going on the top of my list this year. So many people have read it, so many people have loved it. And then going into more of some new releases, a lot of these are like big backlist titles, but the Inheritance games came out like a couple years ago, and I was actually so stoked to get to this one, and I'm pretty sure the second, if not the third one, is already out. So I have some big catching up to do with this one, especially because it's like mystery thriller. I'm super into mystery thriller, but sometimes young adult tends to not quite satisfy me, which is why I'm a little bit hesitant to pick this one up. But I know a lot of people like it, and this one has gotten more hype than I thought it would. Everyone seems to be reading this right now, and it's supposed to be like Knives Out, kind of like a treasure hunt in a way. There's some romance, some family drama, and I just need this book in my life because I love a good mystery thriller. The next one I have here is The Bone Season, which came out in 2013, I believe it was published. It's been about 9 or 10 years since this first was started, and I see it pop up all the time, whether it's YouTube or Instagram or whatever. I feel like someone's always reading this book, and I just read the back again for the first time, and now I remember why I wanted to put this so high on my list. Paige Mahoney, a powerful dream walker operating in the Seven Dials district of London, lives a double life, using her unnaturalness illegally while hiding her gift from her father, who works high up in the Scion regime. But I am so stoked to get to this. I mean, dream walkers, forbidden magic, those are like two things that I love, is some trippy dreams or some type of dream trope like that, and this just sounds really high stakes. I do know there's 2 other books, so we will see how long it takes me to get through this series. And to end us off with a series that I want to start this year is Keeper of the Lost Cities, which is the only middle grade book I think on this list. But this is a series that's like massive. I think there's like, who knows, 8 to 10 books out there. My friend Ami got this for me, and this is her favorite series, and I really love exploring some of my friends' favorite books so I can get an idea of what their reading taste is like and how our reading taste compares. So I've been dying to pick this one up, as well as just a really good middle grade fantasy series, because a lot of middle grades that I read are standalones. So I'm really excited to dive into a middle grade series because I can't think of one that I actually have loved other than like Harry Potter. So it's been a while since I've dove into a middle grade series, and this is one that I really want to get started this year. For obvious reasons, I am very excited to read and start King of Scars because Rule of Wolves is already out. I watched the Shadow and Bone series, I finished the books, and I really need to know more about this Nikolai character because I really enjoyed his humor and who he was in the Shadow and Bone series. So I'm super excited to read more history about him and know more about his life and his family and how he interacts with the group from Six of Crows. I need to finish all Leigh Bardugo's books because I love her, and then also because I don't want it to be too long that I finish Shadow and Bone before I dive into this, because I have a really terrible memory, so I don't want to forget anything about Shadow and Bone before diving into this one. I also really need to finish the series by Libba Bray. I've read The Diviners and I loved that book. That is one of the most surprising books I've ever read. I did not think I would like it as much as I did, but The Diviners blew me out of the water. There was everything I loved in a book. There was suspense, horror, paranormal. It got really creepy and weird with some of like the biblical aspects to it, and the humor was phenomenal. Evie is one of my favorite all-time fictional characters now because of this series, and I don't know what the heck has taken me so long to pick up the next one, because I am itching to know what happens to these characters. It got super dark and crazy and just a twist that I was not expecting, and I know there's gonna be some more twists and surprises in this one as well. And then what also put this book or this series back on my radar is because Jay Kristoff came out with Empire of the Vampire, and I really want to read that one, but I feel like finishing this series first is the smarter move. I loved this first one, and I can understand why some people don't love it because there's like footnotes and it's really dense and very detailed to the point where some of it's a little bit unnecessary, but I loved the characters. I loved Mia Corvair, how strong and confident and just, she's amazing. The way she sets out for revenge. I think I'm gonna need a little bit of like a recap of some sort because I can hardly remember what happened in the first one, but I am very stoked to hopefully finish up this series this year because Jay Kristoff is probably another one of my favorite authors. Well friends, that is my top 15 series that I either want to continue, but most of them I want to start and just figure out where the hype came from for these series because I feel so behind. When I went to college, when I was in high school, I didn't do as much reading, so I just feel a little bit behind on the reading game and wanted to pull some series from my shelves to dive into this year. If you guys have read any of these and you think I should bump one to the top of my list, please tell me in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. I love you guys so much and I am looking forward to a new reading year together. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in my next video.